I am here with Dr. Shane Epting, who is a philosophy professor at Missouri University of Science and Technology. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Epting.
Hey, thanks for having me.
What is a city?
Well, I like to think about a city as a technology. And if you think about what a technology is, in the loose sense, it's something we use to get a job done. So what does a city help us do? I like to think that it helps us flourish and lead our best lives.
Okay, and in your book, you talk about moral ordering. What is that?
Well, if you think about what a city is technology, it has different outcomes, and it affects a wide range of stakeholders, right? So it affects marginalized people, vulnerable populations, the general public, non-human animals, and people. It will affect people in the future, and it also affects the urban artifacts that we hold dear, like neighborhoods, bridges, ballparks, and landmarks.
Okay, and there's something about all of those stakeholders that you're going to put in a particular order?
And so all those different stakeholders deserve attention, but the matter where we approach those situations also is a moral problem in itself, right? So you wouldn't want to make considerations for sidewalks before you make considerations for vulnerable populations. That seems a little bit off, right? So moral ordering is a process that helps us think through those decisions, right? So for instance, in my book, The Morality of Urban Mobility, I look at how we can plan and design transportation systems for all those different stakeholders. And so while public transportation is for the public, it doesn't affect all publics equally, right? So in some cities, you're going to have marginalized groups who have been discriminated against. You're also going to have vulnerable people who need additional consideration. And so I argue that we should think for those populations first before we think of the general public. And then once you make those considerations, we can look at non-human nature, because you don't want to put nature before humans, except for in certain circumstances, right? And then after looking at non-human nature, you got to think about people who are exist in the future. How are our decisions going to affect them? And so after that, you can look at how it's going to affect urban artifacts. And for an example, think about wetlands, right? Wetlands and affordable housing. We have to make affordable housing, but you wouldn't want to make it over a wetland because you would lose those valuable ecosystem services. So the idea is that it's still a framework, but it's more of an anti-framework because it guides us, it shows how things should be done, but it also has some wiggle room in order so that when you have these cases like with wetlands, you can make considerations for them above considerations for affordable housing. That doesn't mean you dismiss concerns for affordable housing. It just means you think about a different way to do it.
So it kind of seems obvious, but I'll ask you anyway. What are the benefits of this moral ordering that you recommend?
Well, it really helps you get to know your city and the other stakeholders that you live with, right? So for example, I think one way to situate yourself morally within a city is to look at how cities are put together. And that's certain knowledge that urban planners have. And when you look at it, it seems to be a disconnect between the knowledge that urban leaders have, like planners and engineers, and the residents who have those decisions made for them. But at the same time, you also have the urban planners needing the knowledge that these people have. And so by having a conversation in concert, what I like to call co-planning, which is basically just participatory urban planning, you can share that knowledge. And I call this urban enlightenment. It's when urban planners, going back to Immanuel Kant's "What is enlightenment?" having the power to use your own understanding. It's when urban planners and engineers gain the knowledge that residents have, and residents gain some of the knowledge that urban planners have about how a city fits together and how it affects people on all different stakeholders. So understanding your place in the moral order is part of that, and gaining insight into what it means to be a different category. Not that you can fully know what it's like to be in their shoes, but you gain some understanding of your place, and therefore you start on a path of urban enlightenment, so to speak, right? You can never attain it because the city is always changing, but striving to know your place in the moral order and your other people who live with you in the city, and also the wildlife, how it fits in, and also the urban artifacts that we hold dear, how all those things coexist. The study of it itself is the pursuit of urban enlightenment.